Well, welcome everyone. Thank you for joining us for today's webinar. My name is Ann Ziola, and I'm the Executive Director of Alumni Engagement at Doane University. And our goals in the Doane Alumni Office are always to educate, engage, and empower alumni. And we are excited to have you join us for this webinar in our brand new professional and personal development program called Lifelong Tigers. This webinar will be recorded and shared on our website as well as the Alumni Facebook page. And today we are presenting the Jobseeker's Pandemic Playbook, presented by Todd Andrews from the class of 2005. And just a little housekeeping before we get started. If you have any issues with Zoom, connectivity, problems hearing, be sure and leave a message in our chat box. And our Assistant Director of Alumni Engagement, Mike Stellick, will be there to help you with those items. And that chat box is just located at the bottom of your toolbar. And you can also chat with each other there. This is a good place to talk with other people that are on the call or share experiences. If you have any questions for Todd during the presentation, please be sure and type them into the question and answer box in your Zoom toolbar, and that's at the bottom as well. And we'll have time during the middle and the end of the presentation to answer questions, and we'll try to get to as many as we can. Now, without further ado, I'd like to introduce to you Mr. Todd Andrews. After graduating from Doane, which was college at the time, in 2005, he graduated with a bachelor's degree in history, and then Todd received his Master of Science in Negotiation and Dispute Resolution from Creighton University Law School. Todd has spent the last decade working in the sales and staffing industry as an account manager, and he helps companies locate talented individuals and helps people land their dream jobs. So Todd, I will turn it over to you.
Okay, sounds like a pretty good introduction. I appreciate it, Ann. Thank you. I have worked about 10 years in the staffing industry, and I can say that it's been a different industry over the years. There's a lot of things that have changed that have made it quite difficult at times, but also at other times quite easy. And one of the biggest things that affects what we do is the state of the career, or the state of the economy, state of people's careers, and unemployment in general. And so right now, with everything that's going on, this has been obviously thrown us for quite a loop. But what I want to talk through today is some ideas of things that we can do as job seekers. So how do we react to the changes in the job market, and how do we stand out as the one to hire when there's just a lot of saturation out there? So what I'm going to talk through here a little bit is how did we get here? How different is this than a normal situation of just needing to look for a job? What are some tried and true methods of whenever you're looking for a job? Here's the things you always want to do. But then secondarily, we're in a pandemic. We're in a very different time. What are some things that are going to be specific to what's going on right now? I'll talk about brand awareness. What is your brand? How do you come across? I'll walk through a bit of the hiring process and how it might have changed. I'm going to talk about it as if you've maybe applied for some jobs before, maybe had some jobs before, so you're not totally green, but also maybe it's been a few years since you've gone through the hiring process and things might have changed. And then we'll talk about what's going to be the next new normal, right? So we have to get ready for the paradigm to shift inevitably again. 2020 has been kind of that sort of a year right now. You know, March was so long ago, and January I don't even remember. But then we'll talk about what are action items and how we can take that stuff going forward. So jumping right in, the new status quo. So what happened? Well, over the course of a few weeks in February and March, globally more, but in the United States, that's when we saw it, a global pandemic spread across the globe. It had unimaginable consequences. Everything came to a screeching halt. In a matter of weeks, we saw the first few cases pop up to where, like, I think the NBA was probably the first sport, but, you know, locally we saw the College World Series got canceled, and that was just mind-blowing. But businesses were closing. Everything was getting canceled. We didn't know how we were going to handle it. What did this mean? Were we all going to literally spend the next few months in our homes, or what was it going to look like? But what resulted in that, that I think people affected the most directly was unemployment. People went from not being able to go to work the next day and sometimes possibly just losing their job altogether. Currently, right now, unemployment is around 21 million. 21 million Americans unemployed. That's actually down 2 million from last month. So things have started improving. But for scale, normal unemployment rate would be about 5 million. And leading up to this, the months leading up to this, we were at 4 for an unemployment rate, and even in some industries, it was sub 3. So in really competitive industries, there was pretty much peak employment for everyone. So 20 million is just kind of off the charts. Entire industries just stopped what they were doing, or if they stayed open, they drastically had to change how they did business. Essential workers, fortunately, forged the path. They found what measures had to be in place to keep people safe. And we're still looking at how we're going to get our economy back on track. In the meantime, people are searching for these white collar jobs that they may have been more traditionally having. You know, we're talking to college graduates here, so there's a certain level of position you might have been looking for. But in the meantime, people are looking at these gig economy positions, delivery jobs, service roles. That's a temporary thing that people are sometimes getting into just to stay working, to keep that money coming in. But now we have a new problem, underemployment. That becomes a new issue, something we did see before this stuff happened. But the idea there is that you are employed, but not at the rate that you should be. You're not maybe earning at your potential or your education level would necessitate, but you have a job. And so that's when we see really low unemployment numbers, like we did coming into this. That means people were possibly underemployed. Social distancing, it's the word of the year. We all know what it means, but it affects at every interaction. We still had places we had to go. At first, we maybe just didn't, but it's never been static. It's like we always talk about with diets. You know, now eat this, don't eat that. It was the same thing. A month ago, we couldn't do certain things. Now we find out maybe they're pretty safe. But every time we learn something new that we got to stop doing and change how we do this or that, we'll adjust to it. What we do in the fall as well could be very different too, when we have a better understanding of things or new rules. Then to confound things even more, we're in an uneasy time. There's a lot of high volatility, high emotions. We're in an avoidable time that has seen some significant civil unrest, and that goes from all kinds of different things, but people are exercising their rights publicly and voicing their opinions, seeking social justice and reform and standing up for their rights, and all of this is going on during a pandemic. It's just a hell of a year. I'll just say that. I think even the murder hornets said, you know what, we'll see you in 2021. We can't handle this. But ultimately what this means is this is the new status quo, and everybody has to decide what are they comfortable with personally, and weigh what personal risk are they willing to take on for their job. And so some people decided, you know, I'm not ready to go out there. I have maybe family members that rely on me that are going to be compromised, or I have to be able to take care of sick parents or this or that. And the job they might have been comfortable with before no longer that it is, and they have to make decisions for them. But how different is this? We have had times people look for jobs, you know, all the time. People change careers, but how different is looking for a job right now than any other time that we've seen? Not quite in a lifetime, but in a generation for sure. We had a candidate-driven market, and what that meant was you could be selective over the type of job you wanted. You could negotiate the best possible package you wanted, and you knew that you maybe had multiple offers waiting for you. Companies were working very hard to find people to fill their roles, and people were hesitant to change positions. I would work with clients a lot of the time that would say, do they have these 3 skills? And I would say they've got the 1, they've got half of 2, and they don't have anything close to 3. But there's no one else that has even the first one. You know, you had to really decide what you could live with, and that's a candidate-driven market. Now we have 20 million people, as we talked about before, looking for work. It's swung back to being a company-driven market. So they're going to get hundreds of applicants for every position, and they're going to work harder at weeding people out. And that's something you have to know right now. This means they're going to be looking for any reason to take somebody off a list, a grammatical error on your resume, a gap in employment that doesn't have a lot of explanation to it. They're going to set you aside. So if you don't meet the basic requirements of a role, if it says you needed 5 years of experience doing this and 7 years experience doing that and a degree in this field, Traditionally, I might say, hey, take a shot. You never know. Some things are set in stone, but some things, maybe you could sell the fact that you had 3 years doing this, and that's kind of like 5 years or something like that. But right now, you're going to be part of the noise if you don't really fit the role. So apply for things you're qualified for. This is not a great time to try to sell yourself in that way. The jobs will return. We're going to see them come back, but it may not look like what you were expecting. We talked about some of the gig economy, but like Instacart hiring 300,000 people, Amazon hiring 175,000, others chipping in at 50,000 here and there. If all those jobs got filled, that's 500,000 people. So we still got 20 million more to go, right? So it's going to be an increase. We will see it come back. Every month should get better and better, but it just may not be what people are looking for or what they were looking for when they started their job search. But we're going to talk through a little bit of that and how to still try to find the right job and take care of your needs in the short run. So traditional job seeking tips. I'm going to go through what are the tried and true methods, and then I'm going to talk through what's different about the pandemic. And then if we want to, we can pause for a second if there's any questions on that. But traditional, tried and true, this is the sort of stuff I tell people all the time when they're looking for a job. When they come to me and they say they're getting ready to make a change or they just got laid off, these are the sorts of things I'm going to walk them through all the time. And it's been the same for 20 years. The first is the resume, the paper resume or digital, whatever it is, the resume rules the day. Edit it for the job you're applying for. Review the job description and make sure that your resume speaks to that in some way. Be brief, but be impactful with the words you do choose to use. You don't have to put the exact verbiage of the role. So some people say, take a line from the job description and throw it in your resume, because that will make it highlight or something like that. There's some schools of thought that say that can be helpful, but right now we're getting back into that mode where people are screening through these resumes really fast. They're not necessarily reading every single word, so that's not maybe going to get caught. What you're going to find, because I've been in this role and I've worked with corporate recruiters who have, they maybe know the 4 or 5 job requirements. You want to make sure those are on there. So for instance, if I was working with let's say a Java developer, and one of the requirements was 5 years of a specific software, some specific software, then he would want to make sure that he put that in there and made sure that he notated that that was in a role that he had for more than 5 years, so that they can see that he meets the basic requirements. That's what I mean when I say fit the role into your resume. Make sure that you're not going to get weeded out because they don't know certain requirements are met. You don't have to leave things off that are unimportant, but also don't overstate things that aren't. You want things to be clear. There is actually a lot of truth to the fact that a one-page resume makes a lot of sense, but also don't feel limited. This is your opportunity to tell your story. You can paint it however you like. That's what I always like to say, but be honest and genuine. So if you had a position where you were maybe working outside of your field, but you want to sell the fact that there's a few things that you learned while doing that are applicable, do it, absolutely. But don't spend 5 paragraphs on that and only have a couple bullets for something that's really relevant. Cover letters are rare to be read, and they don't even really ask for them a lot of the time. But if you get the opportunity to do it, or you think it would make sense, again, be impactful and allow it to personalize who you are. Do it, feel comfortable doing it, but just understand that it's not going to make sense for every role, and they may not even ask for it. Consider your brand in that regard, and that's now coming through in your resume. So you have a handful of steps along the way where they're going to learn who you are. And the first one is you applied for the job. You're interested. Now they're going to look through your resume, and this is going to start to tell them who you are, what your brand is, what kind of candidate you're going to be. And this is going to be something we're going to be consistent throughout the interview process. So here's our first shot at it. So format, font. It depends on the role. So I work in a lot of technology positions, so people can take a little bit more risks, because if you're a creative or you want to show your design skills, then maybe that makes sense in your resume. If I'm working in more accounting roles or in law firms and things like that, I might say keep it pretty professional, keep it pretty Arial, or basic fonts, nothing too crazy. Obviously, never use Comic Sans. Maybe I guess if you're a comic, but I wouldn't. But other than that, email addresses is another thing I think everybody knows, but you don't want to use your Husker fan 29 email. Try to have something professional. Try to understand everything that's on there is telling your story. Sometimes it makes sense to include some social platforms like LinkedIn, or maybe I see developers a lot of time use like Twitter, GitHub, and things like that. If it makes sense, you can incorporate it, but understand the difference of the company you're applying for and what they may use that for. Is it a startup, or is this a corporate professional environment where that stuff just doesn't make a lot of sense? And the same is true for, I've seen people put their hobbies on a resume and things like that. Do what makes sense for you, but understand, you read the rooms a little bit, understand where you're applying and what's going to make sense. I've seen all kinds of different resumes, and everybody who, I can't give you any black and white advice because everybody who reads it differently. What works for me may not work for somebody else, and I would hate to give you advice that would cost you a job. But try to really spend time on it and at least tell your own story. What else do I want to say about that? I think that kind of covers the resume. I know it's important, but at the same time, just really let other people see it, get feedback, and be okay constantly changing it. It's the sort of thing that people try to update and say, okay, now I'm ready to apply for jobs. I'm just going to spam this thing out there. Spend time on the resume. Always be changing it. Take feedback and say, they keep asking me about this, and I talked about this in an interview. I want to make sure that that's in my resume, that they know that, so they can start asking me about it. Check your phone's voicemail. I call people all the time to schedule interviews, and their voicemails are full. You're going to be applying for jobs. You're going to be getting a lot of phone calls from recruiters. We love leaving like 2.5-minute voicemails that just eat up your inbox. So I would say clean out your inbox. Make sure that if you start getting a lot of calls and requests for interviews, it's not going to fill up. And also know what your outgoing messages and things like that. Have your interview clothes, your suit, whatever you want to wear, ready to go. And any materials you need, ready to go. It used to be print off 5 or 6 copies of your resume. Now you might want to make sure you have screenshots or digital copies of things that you want to be able to share or show during your interview. Have it all ready to go. You don't want to find out you have an interview tomorrow and you can't find your lucky tie. And then identify the people that are going to be in the interview. This is a great thing that people do right away when you're kind of getting settled in your chair, a lot of time in a physical interview environment, and you just shook everybody's hand and they all said their name and you don't even have your pen out yet. And everybody's told you their name, but you didn't have a chance to write them down, and now you don't know who you're talking to. So make sure that when you start the interview process, one of the main things you want to remember is identify the people in the room. Maybe even understand what their different roles are. Now when you ask questions, which you should have been preparing for it before you came in, you can ask them to the necessary people that it would make sense to. Also, that's going to allow you to follow up with thank yous. Now, you may not be able to send them directly to the people. Sometimes you're going to have to send it to the recruiter, but you can identify who is in the room by name, and that can be really helpful too. Ultimately, anytime you go through a job interview process, be prepared as possible. Be ready to discuss effortlessly your history and various anecdotes and stories about different experiences you had. Be prepared to answer generic questions about, tell me about a time that something didn't go right, or tell me about a time you overcame a challenge. These are basic interview questions. You should be practicing this stuff. This is kind of one-on-one stuff, but just do get prepared as best you can. Practice in a mirror. Talk to yourself. Eye contact. Smile. Try not to use a lot of crutch words. These things are harder now that you're not going to be talking face-to-face, but these are always good things that you can work on in the interview process. But now, things are a little different. So some of these things aren't going to be the same. Instead of maybe getting some of your physical things ready, now you're going to get your technology ready. So have good headphones. Have a microphone that works. Phone screens and Zoom calls are now going to be more obviously digital, but people forgive tech issues. People understand that, oh, you know, my microphone wasn't quite working, so I'm gonna pop off. Maybe I'll call in, and you can still see me on the screen. These things happen, and people are. It's memorable if you adjusted and adapted and still got through it. But if you're as prepared as possible, you're going to increase the chances that you're going to cultivate a positively memorable experience. But you can't be prepared for everything all the time, so just adapt as well. Know where you can find a quiet spot that you can make sure that you're not going to get bugged or interrupted. Utilize any do not disturb features you can on your phone or any of the technology that you're going to be on. I would still suggest dressing as professionally as you feel is appropriate. We all know this is different and people are at home, but no one needs to see, you know, Van Halen t-shirt. Be aware of your background, your surroundings. If you have virtual green screens or something that you want to use, those are very helpful. Control the room. What I mean is try and see if you're losing the room, because now you're no longer let's picture a conference room and 2 or 3 people across from you, and you're sitting there and you got your binder in front of you and you're talking to them, you're kind of holding court. They're all looking at you, maybe jotting down some notes. Maybe somebody asks a question and somebody else is writing something down. You can scan the crowd a little bit. In this case, you may not even see their faces, but if you do, they might be muted, but they might be looking down or kind of going around and doing different things. Somebody's dog's barking in the background, or their kid's calling from another room. You only get a small amount of time, maybe an hour, maybe 30 minutes. You got to make sure your best points are heard by everybody, because if somebody's a little bit distracted, you might want to reiterate it. This is artfully done. This has got to be done very carefully, but make sure that the room is hearing the important things that they need to hear. And then finally, again, going back to the preparation, practice talking into a webcam. Look at the camera or the person, depending on what the situation is. But try not to just sit and watch yourself if you have like your face up too. You can follow eyes a lot more, but it's hard to speak when you're not looking at someone's face. And that's obviously what I'm going through right now. I don't see all of your faces, but the more you practice it, the more you practice going through this process, the better you'll have a good interview. And then finally, you're going to want to ask questions that are related to COVID. You can't avoid it. Are you guys in the office? Are people working remote? What do you expect to happen over the next few months here? But understand this is a temporary situation. So you don't want to lose sight of the fact of what is the status quo they expect to be going back to. This is a long-term role for you, hopefully. So you want to talk about what's happening right now, but you can't lose sight of what it's going to be forever. So the next thing actually, we can pause there. If there's any questions or if anything's come in, and have I missed anything?
Sure, we can take a second here.
Okay.
Let's go ahead and take some time for questions now. So just a reminder that if you'd like to ask Todd a question, just type your question into the Q&A box that's at the very bottom of your Zoom toolbar here. And we'll take a few moments to collect those questions. Todd, personally, I thought that was really interesting about thinking about how the interview process has changed now when we have panels on Zoom calls instead of being in the same room, and being able to use those interpersonal skills. So, one of the common questions that people always ask is, tell me about yourself when you first arrived to an interview. And how would you say we should answer that? Or what are some of the top 2 to 3 things that you think we should include, especially when we're working with a Zoom format? You may not be able to read people as well.
Right. So just so everyone's aware, traditionally speaking, the evaluation of an interview starts from the second you get out of your car. Somebody might be watching the way you walk across the parking lot, the way you walked in, the way you greeted the person at the front desk, whether or not you asked for a water. I mean, they've watched every single step. Now, like Ann alluded to, they just see that your face popped up on the screen and now you're a talking head. So some of that interpersonal stuff, some of the soft skills are lost in it, how you shook hands and things like that. That's not there anymore. So I would say try to get personalize yourself as fast as you can. Hey, everybody, how are we doing today? Acknowledge the fact that this is weird, and acknowledge the fact that we're all doing the best we can, and try to find something that is relatable. But you don't want to say, oh man, this is terrible. My kid just, threw up in the carpet and I've got all this stuff. You don't want to go too far on that, but personalize yourself as quick as you can, because you lost some of that stuff we do in the lobby where they say, oh, it's pretty warm outside, or things like that. We've lost all that. So you got to try to do that, but do it quickly. And try to maybe even have a couple things tucked away. You don't want to be you want to be genuine, but insincere. But you might have a couple things tucked away where you can say, yeah, no more summer plans. We're not going on vacation this year, but we're trying to do the best we can. Boom, you're done.
Right. That's great. And the other thing that I always wonder about is you've seen so many different resumes in your lifetime in this position. What do you think is one of the biggest pitfalls that you see all the time that you either have to talk to clients about or prospective, employees about, that they really need to pay special attention to?
So there was a fallacy created by someone, probably a resume writer a long time ago, that said, perfect the words of your resume, and here's a list of words. The first word should always be an action word, and all these things. That is so great. I recommend everyone when you have unlimited time, to write the perfect resume. But what instead you want to do is have very brief points. And when I mention making them impactful, I'll go in a little bit more depth there. What that means is say something about, I increased revenue 75% in the first 6 months of my role. That's memorable. That's something that, I'm a salesperson too. That's a sales pitch. That's something that you can take back and they go, oh yeah, Todd said he increased revenue. We like increasing revenue. That's a good thing. Talk about, I was promoted within 6 months of this role and given a team of 3 people to lead. Say something that people know is real, because saying, I utilized my skills of interpersonal communication to develop relationships with other people, that is nothing. And I read so much nothing. What I want to hear is, what did you do that is not just part of a job description? Did you start mentoring fellow employees? Whatever it was, talk about stuff that you did that is going to pop off the page. And numbers inherently look different than words. So anytime you can incorporate data, that's helpful too. But just try not to have these bullets with like verbiage that sounds like it's nothing speak. You really want to be specific and impactful.
Right. They want to know how it can directly apply to them and their company and their bottom line, really.
Bottom line, huge thing. Revenue, yep. ROI, these are important things. But avoid the buzzwords. Just really speak to it.
Sure, sure. We did get one comment that came in from Kaylee. Thank you for joining us today, Kaylee. She just said, such great information with branding based on the job and also the skills to keep in mind for Zoom interviews. So branding is such a big part of what we're looking at today.
Yeah, great segue. And I mean, if you want, we can just pop right into the next section here, which is branding and some of that stuff. So thanks, Ann. Right. I'll say, know your brand. Use what makes you different to its full potential. And the best way to say that is you can be the best version of yourself, but you have to still be yourself. We don't want to recreate a persona right now that is not something you can live up to. And the reason is your resume, your work history, and all available things that they've been able to see up to this point have been reviewed by someone by the time you interview. So now it's time to show up and be what they expect. What expectations did you set for them? You gotta be that now. And I say that, and I'll take a quick little anecdote on that. In this world that we live in, sometimes we have people applying for jobs nationally. And I've worked in some environments. I worked for one of the largest employers in Nebraska internally for their corporate position. And we were getting applications and people were doing these interviews. And one time, more than a couple times actually, we had somebody do a phone virtual interview on a Zoom type call, and somebody else showed up. Literally, a different person showed up. So we thought it was Bob, and instead it was James, and he showed up. And actually the name was correct, but it was not the same person. The people in the interview said, that's not who we talked to. I've also seen situations where people said somebody was clearly feeding them information from the side and it's helping them answer questions. So you gotta be what they expected. You gotta live up to anything that you said as your brand. Be that, because stuff gets found out if not, sometimes right away. But if there's anything off-brand in your resume or in your work history that's not part of what you really want to own, but it is who you are, or it is part of your background, identify it, speak to it. People are never going to understand some of these sorts of things that go on in life anytime more than right now. Curveballs have been thrown to everybody. People have experienced some really crazy hardships and different things. And so right now, people are going to understand that stuff. Down the road, you might want to find a better way to spin it. But right now, people appreciate honesty. People appreciate the fact that we're all going through some hard times. So speak to it. The other question is, personally, your brand may include your closely held beliefs, religious beliefs, political beliefs, your faith is important to you, the different things like that. But we always say leave politics and religion out. Well, you have to consider what relevance these things may have in your professional role. That's your choice. The conventional wisdom says leave it at the door. It's a choice you have to make for yourself. And you have to live with the consequences of what choice you do make. All I want to say is this: discrimination is real. Applicants are protected by laws the same way employees are, but interviewers rely heavily on their gut. And that's a pitfall of this industry, and just the whole interview process in general. Many people who do interviews are not qualified to do them. To say, people like myself who are professional staffing professionals or corporate recruiters and different things like that, we do best practices. We know all the things we're supposed to do, things we should ask, things we shouldn't ask, ways to ask it that still get the point across. But there's so many people, a middle manager who pops into an interview and they don't know what they can say, what they can't say. And they don't know that when they come out, what things they can, the judge always tells a juror, you can consider this information, but not that information. They don't do that. They consider it all. And if there's something personal that kind of rubbed them the wrong way, they might let that supersede unmentionable levels of experience or anything else. So just be careful what you share. Be careful what you want to bring as part of your brand, because it will be considered by everyone. And then a simple test I like to use is this. Imagine a conversation taking place between the attendees of the meeting and the rest of the team, or somebody who wasn't able to attend. How would they describe you? What would they say they found important about what you said? What is the kind of elevator speech they're going to give somebody else? So was it your degrees, standout position you had in the past, how many years of experience you have, but also how'd you come across? Did you talk too much about certain things? Did you convey a subject matter expertise? Was there a previous employer that you laid into a little bit too much? Will they feel you're someone who could fit into their team? Do you work best alone? Would they be somebody that you want to, what is their impression going to be? And are you going to be someone they're going to put on top of the stack when they're done? That's kind of the biggest question you want to ask yourself. So just imagine that conversation taking place and use the foresight to put that into the interview when you go into it. So I want to talk a little bit about the interview process. These things have stayed the same for a long time, at least for the kind of this most recent few years, but they've changed drastically in some way. So I'm going to walk through that. So if you've gone through an interview process recently, or if you went through it many years ago, a lot of it's the same, but I'm going to highlight a few differences. If it's virtual, if it can be done virtually, that's going to tend to be that way. But there are a lot of companies who are just can't wait to get back to going the old way. So for now, this is the way it is. You still apply online, still have a resume, you go through an applicant tracking system. You're going to get emails and calls with the recruiter initially. That's going to start setting up next steps. Respond immediately. When the resumes come in, recruiters start reaching out. You've been picked. I told you there was hundreds of people applying before. Maybe they're going to select 20. Well, if 200 people apply and they start talking to 20, you've eliminated a huge part of the pool. But of those 20, not all 20 are going to respond, or maybe not right away. So you want to help yourself every way you can. Respond right away. Always take the first available time that you can. If I gave you times for an interview, and tomorrow morning at 9 o'clock, or I can do next Thursday at 2 in the afternoon. Some people think, well, I show up better in the afternoon, and I think I'll do that one. And if you can't get a babysitter or you can't get it figured out in time, I understand. But you really want to try to use that first time, because sometimes they fill the position before they even get to those next interviews, and they don't always have to go through it. Ask about the process when you get to that point with the recruiter as well. But traditionally, it's going to go like this. You're going to have a phone screen, potentially just with the recruiter at that point, just making sure that you meet the basic requirements. But then what you're going to see is a Zoom type call with the hiring manager, potentially a third call at that point with the manager's team, or maybe your peers or the manager's manager, or just something maybe going in a little bit depth, depending on how many people are filtered off in the process. So the first phone screen might be 25 people. And then of that, they select 10 to talk to the manager. And then maybe that manager, she decides to bring back 3. But depending on how that goes, to do 10 Zoom calls is going to take maybe a few days. So this process can be spread out over a few weeks. So one of my best pieces of advice is stay in touch with that recruiter. Act like this is well, you don't want to that's desperate, but act like this is the best thing you have going, and you desperately want this job. And every day you don't hear back is a day you're disappointed. So you want to keep in touch with that recruiter, be friendly, be patient with them. And also after the interview, follow up with them, send thank yous, and keep monitoring whether or not you've been moving down the process without being annoying, of course. An offer will likely be made by email, but don't be surprised if you get a call first, but they may just be saying, expect this to be coming by email. But that changes this a little bit too. So be comfortable saying you need time to review it if they do call you. You're not under any obligation to just accept the offer right away. And oftentimes there will be some things you want to discuss through. When you respond to your offer, consider how you counter, be confident in yourself, know what you want, But one thing I always like to say here is something called a BATNA, B-A-T-N-A. It's the best alternative to a negotiated agreement. What that means is if you propose a new offer, and some companies view that as, okay, you've taken the offer we've given you off the table, you've proposed this new offer. If they reject that offer, everybody walks away. So be prepared for the idea that, like, if I throw out this new offer and I lose this opportunity, do I have an alternative that I'm comfortable with? If we walk away from this negotiation, do I have an alternative I can live with? And so keep those things in mind when you negotiate. It doesn't mean you never negotiate, because you might have a job that's offering you 60,000, another one that's offering you 65, and you could say to the 60,000 one, hey, would you guys offer me 65? Because you know you have something else. So you got to know what your options are, but keep those in mind when you are going through the negotiation process. So it's called a BATNA. Consider it. But this part of the process can be shortened. The next part can take a lot longer. The hiring date might be set, but it could be many weeks down the road. There could be some documents that need to be mailed back and forth. There could be signatures they need, or a copy of your driver's license, or drug testing. They may have to mail you some proprietary information, or a laptop. They may have to pick up some things from an office. Or these things are going to be very different, and they're not traditional, because you're no longer going to have your in-person on-site onboarding. But be flexible. Be flexible and work with them. Everybody's trying to streamline their efforts. A lot of companies have been polled recently on LinkedIn and say that they've got it figured out and they've got it going perfectly. A lot of candidates are saying it's not quite working that way, but just try to go with them and try to go with the way they have it going. Be flexible. It's still getting figured out, but eventually you are going to start that role. Training is going to be unique and different. That's a whole different. Once you start the job, it could be very different too, but just get to that stage and understand it's going to be a little bit different than it normally is. But then we're going to get ready for the next new normal, right? So this year's thrown a lot at us, and we're going to see what the next few steps are going to look like. But there's a handful of things that will not probably go back to normal, and this is prediction time. We're a digital society now. That's kind of unavoidable. Businesses had to deal with this for long enough that they found some ways to work with it. Zoom calls for interviews, they're probably going to be more commonplace. People will continue personally, like ordering groceries online and things like that. Like, there's a certain element of this digital society that's going to stay with us. Work from home, it's going to be a lot more acceptable for companies that maybe it wasn't before. It could shift how many of them operate, and you're going to see more flexible scheduling too. Sick time is going to be something that people are, hey, I'm not feeling well, stay home, please, or I'm taking care of sick family members, stay home. There's going to be a lot more flexibility for things like that. We're going to see a limitation on face-to-face interactions when it works. The conversation can be done in an email instead of a meeting. Once you are working, it probably will try to be. Instead of seeing networking happy hours at a bar or something like that, we're going to have digital cocktails, right? We're going to have, instead of a business lunch or a sales pitch, it's going to be, we'll send you DoorDash and we'll do a Zoom presentation. This is going to be the case for a while, because people are still going to want to limit those interactions when they don't have to. Risk is something that's considered now. Job fairs and career fairs, those are things that how we get to these recent college grads to fill these roles, or people looking for work, or people coming out of the military, or all these different things. They have a huge purpose in what we do, but we can't have these physical booths with people coming by and handing out swag and stuff like that. So we're going to see more targeted marketing and digital career fairs. And then finally, possibly needs to not go understated at all, because this is probably a cultural change we're going to see here too. Work-life balance stopped being about separating the two parts of your life. You can't bifurcate your time anymore. It just doesn't work that way. Now we have to wear all of our hats all the time. So what does that look like? We'll see the emergence of work-life integration is what I think it's going to start to feel like. That means you're going to be editing a document while you're helping your kids with their homework, or being a teacher in your own right. You're going to be ordering groceries for the week while you're muted on a conference call. Clocking in and out is an illusion that we no longer will experience. Work-life integration. Get used to having your work hat on all the time, your home life hat on all the time, and the two are going to start blending together. In my industry in sales, we always talk about, still working on your phone late at night, It's going to start just being all the time you're available, and companies are going to start understanding their employees are going to have to take care of home life all the time too. That is not a normal we're going to see again, I don't think. But things that will return to normal, people like to work. People like having jobs. People that have not been working enjoy that time to be home with their families or reassess their career. But there's a normalcy, a semblance of normalcy that comes from having a job, and people crave that. Also, it's inevitable for us to return to an in-person working environment. That's going to happen at some point. And then many people are already starting to see it. A lot of my clients are saying in June, we're going to start going back into the office. So things are going to open back up, but what's it going to look like? Social distancing will still be a real thing for a while. We see fewer large gatherings. We're not going to be handshaking as much. Masks and washing hands will be very important as we head into the third and fourth quarter of this year. I really believe. I just read an article today staving off the second wave. You're saying masks and washing your hands. That's just going to be important to see going forward. But that's going to be a part of when we start going back into the office. Finally, this is where I get touchy-feely. You have to love what you do. That's what I tell everybody when I talk to them. I know you want to get a job. You have to love what you do. So I'm going to channel my inner Steve Gunkel here. Those of you remember him, sociology professor. When things are uncertain, people have to focus on their basic needs, the bottom row of the Maslow's hierarchy, right? You got to pay your bills. You can't get kicked out of your home or apartment. You got to put food on the table. Can you put gas in your car to get to your job? You have to meet these responsibilities, and you can't be too selective to do it. So people might take some jobs that just meet these needs, but don't give them joy. But retention in these roles is only possible when the reward outweighs the pain. So maybe it's a certain salary or the position itself is rewarding, but it has to be worth it long term. So what drives you? What motivates you? Find your purpose, know your value, and go get that job of your dreams when the time's right. And I don't know if it is right now. If you're not working, it may not be, but don't lose sight of that. You gotta enjoy what you do. We'll have a couple questions here in a second, but here's just some action items for the road for the people that this was just kind of an overwhelming amount of information. Here we go. Here's what we're going to talk through. Here's what we talked through, and here's the last parting thoughts. A job search is a full-time job. Check for openings every day. Utilize the job boards, but understand this. It's kind of changed in the last 2 or 3 years. Companies spend so much money to make sure that these jobs are easy to find. So you no longer, you got to check CareerLink, you got to go to individual job boards, you got to be a member of Monster and all these different things and bump your resume to the top. Resume databases aren't even really used that much anymore. Companies want to make it easy. So Google is your friend. All of these things advertise because Indeed is now incorporated with Google. If you just search for it, you'll find the jobs. But you want to be one of the first applicants. So search every day. Research the companies you're applying for. Utilize things like Glassdoor or LinkedIn. Get an impression of what their culture is. Find out what exists behind the curtain. What are people getting paid? What are they saying about their roles? Also, widen your net. Some national companies are hiring remote workers right now that can live anywhere. So previously, it may not have been possible to work for Amazon, for instance, but you might be able to now. Also, this is sometimes for the younger people, but like for anybody really, understand what a total compensation package is. So what matters most to you? Is it just a large salary? Is it certain benefits? Is it good PTO? It's easy to forego retirement benefits at sometimes in your life, but you need to understand how much a good retirement package can outweigh $5,000 in salary. You're getting matched free money on top of that, tax-free. These are things you need to really consider. So understand the total package. A lot of times you see startups and companies offering, hey, we have a pool table or there's a keg in the break room, but we're underpaying you 10% under the market value. There's no 401k, and you have quote unquote unlimited vacation, which, spoiler alert, means you have no vacation really, nothing set in stone. So these are things to consider. Changing jobs is never easy. So find ways to step back and relax, because this is one of the most stressful things you'll ever go through. And it's just the nature of things. Job hunting, the interview process, you got to find a way to unplug sometimes. So take care of yourself. and find ways that you can de-stress through this process, because you don't always want to be on edge. And finally, once you land the dream job, hopefully that's the goal here. Be thankful for the people that helped you get there. It's easy to get the job and you start Monday and just kind of move on, but it means a lot to go back and show gratitude to those who maybe helped you open those doors or helped you prepare for your interview. Show gratitude, and then also pay it forward. Look for people that you can find that aren't there yet and how you can help them achieve their goals and their dreams. I think it's important, and it's something we can all do to just help our people. We're all in this together. We're all going to get through it together. And finally, I'll leave you with this. We're all Doane tigers, and tigers have stripes because it helps them blend in and to stay hidden. But what makes a tiger special is they can stand out whenever they want. So that's all I've got. If you guys have any questions, we can try to go through those right now.
That's great. Thank you, Todd. We'll go ahead and take some questions for now. We have about 10 minutes left, just so we have time for a few questions if anybody has one. Just a reminder to be sure to type your questions into the Q&A box at the bottom of the Zoom toolbar. And Todd, while we're waiting, I want to make sure to say nice job on the shout out to Steve Gunkel, who would be very proud of you. And that man had the best eye contact I think I've ever seen in a class. So that was a good one. The other part that really spoke to me was the work-life integration, because I think even when we were meeting earlier this week, you had kids in the background. I had one climbing on my neck as we're trying to talk. And it's just something that we're having to learn to work through. And that's probably going to be the way for a little while. So
and everybody understands it, but at the same time, you need to understand it. Your family needs to understand it, because who doesn't understand it very well? The toddlers. They don't understand that you're busy all the time, or why did you come in the room a little bit frustrated? So that work-life balance and integration means, are you there for your family too? Are you able to shut it off when you have to, or at least transition away from it? It's just, I don't have the answers, because we as a society haven't figured it out yet, but we're going to do it together, and it's not going to really go back to the norm. We don't clock out at 5. That's not going to work that way anymore.
Right. Making time for everybody is so important.
Yeah.
We did have a couple of questions come in. One is again from Kaylee. She just wanted to know some of the best tips for resumes or other things that when you're completely changing career paths, when you're going from something like science to non-science, what are some of the things to be mindful of?
So you get to tell the story however you want. There are certain things you have to be factual about. So what's tricky is sometimes the job title is such that you really can't avoid. You can't make it sound like you were an engineer of what, no, this is what your job was. You have to call it what it was. But that's where I talk about trying to say what skills were you utilizing in that role and how might they be applicable. So if you're doing a career change, yes, previously, let's say it was science, you want to talk about how much lab experience you had and how, various technical skills. That's not going to be as relevant now, because you're trying to become something else, a salesman. So what you want to talk about instead is, I'm a history major, Ann. I don't know if you remember that, but
I do.
I've spent a long time having to sell why that was a good investment of 4 years. And one of the things that Mark Orsag and Ned McFarland and other professors I had told me was, when you become a history major, you learn how to think. That's what you're doing. You're showing how to think and analyze, and that's a tool you can use for life. So how did you learn things in whatever role you had that's going to help you in the next one? And maybe it taught you how to think. Maybe it taught you how to be critical. Maybe it taught you how to analyze data in a certain way. Take those skills and put them on the page. It's not necessary anymore to talk about what your job function was. They don't care. What they want to see now is, what did you gain from that time period? We want lifelong learners, and we want to see what they learned, and you got to put it on the page. Just in general, though, for a resume, I would look at all kinds of different templates out there, formats, look at all kinds of different things, and just see what you're comfortable with, because it is your chance to really show your personality. The data is important, but it's got to pass that eye test. It doesn't all have to be pizzazz, but it's got to be something that kind of draws them out a little bit too.
Sure. We did have a question come in from John Weimer, who's one of our original Tigers on Tour students. Thanks for joining us, John. And this is right up your alley, Todd. He's just wondering, what are some of the tips that you have for negotiating after a job offer?
So this is why it was important to go to Glassdoor. This is why it was important to go to LinkedIn. What you want to do is have a good idea. It is no longer this thing where we're blind. people used to say, how much do you want to get paid for this job? And a lot of times people in optimism or naivete would ask me, well, how much are you paying? And it's a tricky thing because, you know, the role might pay between $60,000 and $90,000 a year based on experience, but I'm not going to say, oh, we pay between 60 and 90,000 because uniquely and almost 100% of the time they come back and want 90,000, right? You know, so it doesn't work that way as much anymore. But what we can do is somebody who held that role before might go on Glassdoor and say, well, you know, they start everybody out at 60,000. After about 5 months, you know, my commission went up to this, or I was at 60,000 for a long time, but a couple people came in at 75. Or you have to be a senior manager to get anything over 80. But that information's out there. So if you know you want 90, but you go out on Glassdoor and find out this role just doesn't pay that, I'm not going to get there, then you can maybe be a little bit more educated in what you ask for. So that's where I talk about total compensation. Be willing to go beyond salary. Be willing to say, okay, so if we're capped out at 70, what kind of sign-on bonus can we talk about? What do we have in regards to a 401k or stock purchase or anything like that, or maybe even greater time off or something like that, whatever makes sense for you. But if you have a dollar amount total comp package you're looking for, know what's within bounds. And there's a lot of advice I could give you in terms of like negotiating, setting a number early on. But a lot of time you don't get that opportunity because maybe they've set the expectation of what the salary range can be. But my best advice is this, going back to that BATNA, know what you want to ask for, but understand that the answer might be no. And if it's no, are you comfortable moving forward? And so sometimes acknowledging that early on, saying, hey, everything looks good and I really like this job and I'm excited to accept, but here's what I was looking for from a salary perspective. How close can we get to that? Or how you know, if we can't get to it right away, is it possible to have something maybe even written in the job description that says after 90 days, we'll reevaluate the salary and see if, you know, I've seen people negotiate a $5,000 raise at the time of offer after 90 days. Now they could come back and say you didn't meet the expectations, but you can still put that out there, that expectation out there. You have to be happy with the role, so don't just be happy to take the job or whatever they offer. But understand this is a very different market to be negotiating heavy-handedly. So I would not advise to go too hard on it either. So.
Those are great tips. We did have one comment that says, how do you recommend addressing layoffs? My organization is restructuring and eliminating positions, including mine at the end of the month. Thus far, I haven't had to address it since I'm still technically employed, but the end of June is fast approaching.
Yeah, looking for a job while having a job is incredibly difficult. And also people that go through a layoff, I know can feel sometimes it's emotional, I think, and that's a really difficult thing too. You didn't do anything wrong. You didn't deserve to not have your job, yet you feel a lot of emotions that are difficult to work through. I would say the best thing is to get active early. I talk to people all the time that say, you know, I'm working right now. My availability date is actually July 15th. And you're thinking, wow, I can't even interview you yet because you can't start for over a month. But it's good to start early. It's good to set that expectation. And people love hearing that somebody's being really proactive, hearing that they're still employed, but they know that the clock's ticking. Start that process. As I said, the interview process might get cinched up a little bit because it's actually running really efficiently right now with all these Zoom calls. But at the same time, start dates might be pushed out. I would say get a head start, start applying right now, get that resume cleaned up, especially if you haven't done it in a while. Practice all the things like you're going to be in a full-fledged job blitz, even though you might be working or technically employed. And also, when I talk about identifying things and speaking to them, one tricky thing about layoffs is you feel very compelled to say this wasn't my fault, but at the same time, be very careful about how you describe how the company treated you. If you had a great time there and you worked there for 10 years, don't let how it ended maybe color how you describe your time there. Again, it's an emotional time. I would just say everyone knows the economy's in a tough spot. So saying that the company had some layoffs or we had to tighten things and my department was cut in half and whatever it was, own it, acknowledge it, but then still be able to talk about your time with that company in a positive way as best you can. It's tough though. There's not a lot of great advice. Hopefully everybody can get through it.
Those are good tips though. And I think we have one more question left. We have just a couple minutes, but probably enough time to sneak it in. Holly says that she's a brand new grad in midlife And she says, I know what my degree is and I know some of the things I can do with it, but how do you suggest going out there and weeding through when this represents a significant shift in my career path? I have a lot of interesting life experience, including part-time jobs and volunteerism that I can spin in a lot of different directions. Is that wise? How does she weed through it?
Yeah, so this is part of knowing your brand and telling your story. The perfect candidate is often not who gets hired. And that's confounding for someone like me. You know, I give the company that I'm working with, I don't know if I explained it, but part of what I do is I help companies find people for their roles. I give them the perfect candidate or exactly what they asked for. And a lot of times when you give somebody what they asked for, they find out that's not quite what they wanted, actually. And so what they want is a person. They want a fully fledged person that has uniqueness about them. And so I might say that they've got all the 5 requirements that they asked for. But when they talk to someone and find out, yeah, no, this role might have a team under them. So this person that did, you know, not just volunteerism, but like unique stories to tell. I was going to say like Habitat for Humanity or things like that, but it tells a story about who you are. And if you were mentoring at-risk youth, or if you were part of, you know, the Teammates program, for instance, Tom Osborne's film, these things tell a story about who you are. They're very relevant because it says what kind of employee they're going to be getting. They want someone that can come in and do the job day one, no question, because personality doesn't keep the factory running, right? But at the same time, they want a person. They want someone that's real that they can work with. So I think any stories that you have that you can tell, any experiences you had, I talked about it in the resume part. Go ahead and highlight that time that you were, you know, I'll say working at a movie theater or a bartender or something like that. But if you gain something from it, if you figured out a unique skill or it forms some part of your personality, speak to it. Absolutely. I think I've seen, especially working in technology, I've seen more mid-career shifts where people say I was a school teacher for a number of years, right? I worked for the telephone company for 25 years, and I'm getting into IT. It's one of those careers you can just kind of get into anytime you want. If you want to go take some of these classes and get a certification, you can start doing IT. And so I see a lot of mid-career shifts. Just talk about what you did that made you who you are. You know, I worked at this company for to know what made you who you are. So that would be my advice there.
That's great. Well, Todd, I want to make sure and thank you for joining us today. You have been an alum that has supported Doane throughout the years with your time, your talent, your treasure. You were a dedicated student when you were here, and everyone was happy to be around you. And I'm just so thankful that you're continuing to share the rest of the knowledge with others worldwide, with our alumni worldwide. So thank you for doing that.
Yeah, and if anybody ever wants to reach out on LinkedIn, I'd be happy to try to utilize my network to help anybody find a job. I specialize here in Nebraska, of course, but I'll try to do anything I can for you.
That's great. Thank you. Well, just as a reminder, this webinar has been recorded and it'll be shared online soon if you want to share it with anybody. And to see a lineup of new webinars, go to doane.edu/lifelongtigers. Our next webinar will actually take place next Friday on June 19th and will feature Allison Horn from the class of 1997. And she's going to talk about recognizing your authentic self, your strengths, your purpose, engagement, things that apply right to what Todd was talking about as well. So thank you again, everybody, for joining us. And as always, go Doane.